Today, whatever our reasons, we take the first steps toward a new future for humanity. Today, we begin to make our dream reality.
Mass Effect Andromeda is set in the same universe as the previous Mass Effect games, but offers a fresh start. But can this new chapter in the series build on the history of the previous games? My name is James, and here to answer that question and more is the person who's reviewed the game for us, Andy Hartup.
Hello.
So Andy, let's start at the beginning. The story of Mass Effect Andromeda. It is the same universe, but what's going on?
So what's happened here is it's about 600 or 700 years after the original events of Mass Effect, and you have been sent into deep space to the Andromeda galaxy to colonize it. Now, it's not just humans, it's all the regular races that you will recognize from the Milky Way. So it's the Turian, the Asari, all those guys. They've come with you essentially for a fresh start in a new galaxy.
So, gameplay-wise, what does that mean for the things that you'll be doing?
So the big drive of the game is you're going to be exploring. You're exploring all parts of this unknown space, and the main aim of the overall game is to find colonies, to find habitable worlds to settle your colonies in and live happily ever after. However, when you first arrive in the Andromeda galaxy, all the planets which you've targeted, which you thought would be supposed golden worlds, unfortunately they're inhospitable and uninhabitable. And that is because of some weird alien tech which is controlling each and every one of the planets. And it's up to you to find out how to reverse this tech and make them habitable.
So does that mean you're doing different things on every planet, or is it following a set structure?
You're not necessarily doing different things on each planet. I mean, to make a planet viable, you have to go and activate these alien monoliths and then explore a vault and essentially turn the planet's power back on. There is an awful lot of sort of fetch and carry quests and an awful lot of go here, do this, now go here, do this, press triangle to interact. It's very, very templated and actually quite a grind and quite monotonous, a lot of the quests. Now, one of the things that you brought up was in each planet you visit, or most of the planets you visit, you're trying to make them viable for colonists. And the way you do that is by activating these alien monoliths. Now, this is perhaps where the game gets its most repetitive and frustrating for me. You go to activate the 3 monoliths on each planet. So you activate those by going and scanning for glyphs around the monoliths, which is not bad, but not great either. It's sort of the equivalent of climbing a tower in Assassin's Creed. You have to work out how to get there. And then, once you scan the glyphs, to activate the monolith, you have to do a Sudoku puzzle.
But without numbers this time?
Without numbers, but with glyphs.
With alien glyphs.
Which... It's fun the first 2 times you do it, but you have to do that 3 times on every planet. It gets very, very frustrating very quickly, and they're quite difficult. So if you get them wrong for any reason, you get attacked by a wave of enemies, and then you have to start again. It is incredibly frustrating. You can get items which let you bypass these puzzles, but they're quite rare. So I think it was a real misstep, and you have to do this on every single planet. So that bit for me, no fun.
Well, speaking of no fun, one of the things in the previous games was planet scanning, which got you resources. How does that work in this game?
So you can scan planets, although it's not nearly at the same sort of level and grind as it was in previous games. You can literally visit a planet and you'll be told there's an anomaly on this planet, and you scan for the anomaly, fire off a probe, and you get some resources. You can also scan for resources when you're driving around the barren landscapes by activating your mining computer. So your little robot Sam will say, hey, you're in a mining-rich zone, and you'll go, all right, I'll turn on my computer. Oh, there's some iron. I'll fire off a probe, and you get it. So scanning for resources is actually much easier than it was in previous games. I wouldn't describe it as more fun, but it's easier.
The thing when you're in space about doing it is that you have to watch yourself travel to that location every single time.
That is true.
For about 30 seconds.
Yeah, in previous games you could nip in and out of the galaxy map. You zoomed out, you focused on a planet, and you immediately focused on the new planet. You could scan it. In Mass Effect Andromeda, you find a planet on the galaxy map, and then there's a little animation where you actually fly to it, and it only takes like 5 or 6 seconds, but it does lose that immediacy. And it makes space exploration a lot more of a chore than it needs to be. I think the meat of the Mass Effect series has always been the way that you interact with the characters, however, and like how you progress your own particular story within the world and how you make your own character. So that really is, I think, why people play Mass Effect, not necessarily for the overarching story.
And would you say that is a thing that this game has?
So the game is a bit hit and miss with that. Some of the characters that you interact with are really interesting, and you quite enjoy hanging out with them. So there's a guy called Liam who's got a bit of depth, and Cora isn't your sort of Ashley Williams type military space racist grunt. She's got a lot more depth to her. She used to be an Asari commando. She's quite fun to hang out with. I find PB a little bit weird. The Krogan, he's okay. All the other crew members they've got points of interest, and I think genuinely the crew members are the most interesting part of the game. Not all of them are very interesting. There's I won't spoil it, but there's a new guy who you meet later on who's an entirely new species, and he's a bit of a flat note. The way you interact with them, however, is slightly disappointing because they don't necessarily give you many interesting things to do. There are some highlights, some highlights of their loyalty missions, as you'll recognise them from previous games. But on the whole, they all sort of feel like folded into the general grind of the rest of the game. So talking to them good, doing things for them, not quite as good as it could have been.
And if we're talking about talking to the characters, I guess we should have a little comment on the faces and the animations of the people in the game.
They are not good. My version of Ryder, and I think everyone else's version, I went with a male Ryder and tried to make him look a little bit like me.
The footage we have is of female Ryder, so this will help.
Fair enough. When he's having a conversation with someone, his eyes dart side to side, like he's always trying to avoid your gaze or like look elsewhere. And other people, like some of the camera framing is really bad. So you'll be talking to someone, they'll be facing completely the other way. They'll be talking to someone else who's out of shot. It's a bit of a mess. I mean, the actual facial features themselves look really good, but the framing of them and the conversations and the weird things that happen with their eyes and their mouths, and they don't really express emotions as well as they could have done. Like some games, you see the emotion on the characters' faces, whereas in Mass Effect, they just all look a bit shifty, like they don't want to be there.
All right, well, let's get back to the things that you'll be doing on the planets. You've mentioned doing some of the glyphs and puzzle sections. Shooting is obviously, in combat is obviously quite a big part of the Mass Effect universe. Mm-hmm. How does it work in Andromeda?
Well, Mass Effect's never really been like a premier third-person shooter. It's always been something that's been an addendum to the RPG elements, which is fair enough, but in Andromeda, they've tried to make it faster and more aggressive. They've given you the jetpack so you can leap over cover and things like that. And you can change profiles on the hop so you can sort of become an engineer suddenly, or you can become a biotic or a soldier, and there's all sorts of different types of profiles that you can have because you're the Pathfinder. They don't tend to make an awful lot of difference because the combat isn't nuanced enough. So essentially, it just changes the special magic that you can make out of your hands, and the guns that you get, they're okay. Like they're not particularly accurate to use. They don't feel particularly good to use. The combat, to be honest, is a bit of a mess. They've tried to make it too fast and aggressive without really making it slick or smooth enough to go with that. So it's quite difficult to control, and you often end up sort of firing in the wrong direction or punching in the wrong direction. You'll get shot from behind, you won't quite know why. It is like a bit of a concern because the game is very, very combat focused. You're fighting all the time. So I'm not a huge fan of the combat.
Okay. Well, if you're not shooting, then most of the time you're driving because these planets are inhospitable for most of the time. Mm-hmm. Is that fun?
Not really.
Good. Great.
When you're driving between points, and it's worth noting, fast travel is your friend. Mm-hmm. When you're driving around a planet, they're often very big, but they feel very, very empty to these planets. And they've conformed to very, very tired stereotypes. There's an ice world, a desert planet. Well, there's more than one desert planet. There's not a lot of variety to a lot of the environments. There are some nice worlds which you will visit, and they sort of feel like a real breath of fresh air. But a lot of the time you're just driving around big empty spaces, and you'll see something happening, like you'll see the cat fighting some remnant, and you'll go, oh, I'll have a piece of that, I'll go and fight that. and you'll risk your life and you'll go and have this big combat battle with the cat and the remnant, and then you'll get nothing for it. You'll find a container and it'll be like, hey, here's some salvage. That's great. So, like, doing stuff in the game, like all the missions, like driving between them, is quite boring. And there are a lot of, like I said, a lot of grind quests, a lot of fetch and carry, a lot of go to A, B, then C, and then that'll happen.
Okay, so we're getting towards the summary stage of it.
Mm-hmm.
In your time while playing it, we've played it on a standard PS4.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any problems with it graphically, glitch-wise, anything that went madly wrong for you?
There have been a few problems, yeah. I've lost save data where it just simply wouldn't load the save, which was very frustrating. I've heard reports from other people that like a trigger required to finish a mission hasn't triggered, so you've lost like 45 minutes worth of play. Especially frustrating in the vaults, which is what you use to activate the planets, because you can't save in the middle of a vault. So you can potentially be in there for an hour and then come out, and if it doesn't trigger properly, you've lost an hour of play. All sorts of stuff like enemies not reacting when you shoot them, bodies disappearing. It's quite buggy and glitchy, like combat where you don't take cover properly, you sort of float above a rock. A lot of work needed on it, I think.
Okay, well then, let's sum this up.
Mm-hmm.
Your experience of Mass Effect Andromeda, what would you say as an overall package?
If you got this far, you'll know that I found it quite disappointing. Like, I absolutely adored the first few Mass Effect games. Like, I played all of them more than once. Thought they were absolutely brilliant. Loved the journey. I even quite liked the ending to Mass Effect 3, which I know a lot of people got upset about. Like, I quite liked it. Mass Effect Andromeda is... it doesn't understand what makes the Mass Effect series great. It has all the elements, but it doesn't bring them together in a way that feels satisfying or in a way that understood what made the original trilogy great. I love the idea of going out there and exploring and making a whole new world for yourself. That's absolutely brilliant. But just so many of the elements on the way, they simply don't work within that world. And, you know, the quests are punitive. That's a big deal. Like, they're just no fun to play. The characters are all right, but interacting with them isn't necessarily as much fun as it should be. There's a lot of technical jargon. Like, the whole game, you get technical jargon thrown at you repeatedly, like the AVP points and this thing and this thing and this thing. And keeping track of it, like keeping constant track of it, is an absolute nightmare. And you just end up getting really confused about what you're doing or where you're supposed to be going. It is a real mess. The combat's not a lot of fun. It isn't the Mass Effect game that a lot of people were hoping for, and right now I can't recommend that you'd buy it if you're a fan of the series.
But there are some positives in there, right?
Characters are good. Yeah, I like the characters.
Okay, let's put a score on it. What are we giving Mass Effect Andromeda?
Well, I mean, it is an enormous universe, and there's plenty of secrets to discover, and you know, RPG systems are quite solid, like the characterizations. I'm going to give it 3.5.
Okay, thanks Andy. Let us know what you think about Mass Effect Andromeda in the comments below. Click the boxes on the left for more content from us, and don't forget to hit that big button in the middle to subscribe for more gaming news, reviews, previews and features right here on Games Radar Plus.
Deep breaths. You're gonna want to take it easy.
I've been taking it easy for 600 years.